All right, and welcome to Now This Is Podcasting. I'm your host, Connor, and I have my co-host, Jaden here,
Yee.
and former guest, Calvin.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about I Am Sam. This is a... I like that we get to talk about this one because this is something we, I think, kind of mention throughout a lot of our episodes is that, if there are fan comments and if you want something for us to review, we'll do it. And so this was actually, this was left as a comment on one of our videos, and we're going to review it now.
Shout out Steve.
Yeah, shout out Steve.
Steve.
So I give a little just kind of overview of the movie. It's about Sean Penn plays a father with a mental disability, and it's about basically him raising his daughter, who's played by Dakota Fanning. The woman that he has the child with abandons them, kind of moves on. She doesn't want to be with him. She, I think, mentions in the story she's like, it was just a place to sleep, and
it's fucking awkward.
yeah, it is. It really. I mean, and that's the thing is this is it's a pretty tragic story. But so he continues raising his daughter. He works at like Starbucks, and so he's just kind of getting by. But it's the story kind of really takes off where they've kind of reached this threshold where Sean Penn's character kind of has the intellect of a 7-year-old, and Dakota Fanning's character is gonna turn 8, or is turning 7. So they've
She just turned
7 in the movie. Yeah. And so it's you've kind of reached this point where it's okay, it's she's going to be intellectually superior to him, so it's who's going to be taking care of who at this point. And you can see in the story it's just kind of him moving or falling behind Dakota Fanning's character, and then courts get involved, and so that's kind of the base of the story. And it's how does this family kind of deal with it? How does Sean Penn deal with it? What happens to Dakota Fanning? And it's all kind of other factors that play a role, like the courts and lawyers and all that stuff. So that's kind of your basic, I don't know, kind of rundown of the movie. I want to talk also, this is directed by Jesse Nelson. I was looking up stuff. He mostly just did TV before this. He didn't, this is, from what I saw, this was his first real big movie. It had a budget of $22 million, and it made $97.8 million in the box office, which is...
It's not bad.
It's surprising to me because I'm not gonna. I'll just be honest. Right off the bat, this is not a top tier movie to me, and and I love the suggestion, and we'll watch it for sure. But this is. It seemed like a bad way to tell a really important story, and I think a lot of it is just it's either the filmmaking, the actual camera techniques that went into it,
super sloppy,
and then it's just kind of the way these characters interact with Sean Penn's character and the way they interact with Dakota Fanning's character. It was just a lot of. Yeah, I think sloppy, or it's just it's not very well thought out, I don't think. And that's what bums me out, because I think this is a really, actually, an important story that has really kind of big implications, and it matters. How do we determine custody? At what point is it important to have a child raised by the parents? At what point is it not important? When is it detrimental? When is it not detrimental? So I think this is a really important story. I just think it's executed pretty poorly in this movie, which bums me out, because I wanted this to be done well,
Yeah, exactly. And I agree with everything you're saying. It seems like they were going for a Rain Man type story, the one with Dustin Hoffman.
Oh, I was isn't Sean
That's why I
Penn in
got
that
them
too?
confused.
Okay,
That's
yeah.
why I got them confused. I remember, I was
Right.
it's Dustin Hoffman, and then they mentioned Dustin Hoffman in the movie. I was like, wait, what the fuck?
Yeah,
And Calvin's
that's
it's
actually-
Sean Penn, dude.
Yeah.
That actually kind of confused me. Yeah, for a second too, I was like, wait, isn't Sean Penn in that too? But no, it is. You're right. It is. It isn't Sean Penn.
But yeah, I think that was the point. I read things that Sean Penn wanted this film to be Oscar bait. He wanted this to be the film that really put him into the next class of
Actors.
yeah,
that higher echelon,
that higher echelon method actor, where he was respected across all genres, just for his incredible dedication to his work. That's what I feel is so strange about this film, is that you have a lot of elements that, when you say he worked in TV, it makes so much more sense, because it has the tone of a television show. It has a lot of camera work similar to a television
Right.
show, lighting similar to a television show, music similar to a television show. And those elements then are juxtaposed with an incredible depth of acting from three people: Dakota Fanning, Michelle Pfeiffer, and Sean Penn, and they're fantastic. In a vacuum, they are wonderful, wonderful performances. But how you actually contrived the dialogue is really sloppy. It's meant to be like, here is this vacuum for this big performance. We'll allow our actor to fill it, but you can see it coming from such a mile away that it's a melodramatic way to set up an amazingly dramatic and well done performance. That's kind of my take on
Yeah,
on
I
this
think
film.
you're exactly right. Oscar bait is like a perfect way to put this movie. It's just is like, let's bring up some topic that is. I think I likened it to Dallas Buyers Club, where like that's a really charged topic, like AIDS epidemic and
Yeah, it
and,
gives you this
yeah.
landscape to explore deep and stories that aren't talked about. I think that's what's
Yeah,
great about
right.
films, and kind of what's ironic about Oscar bait is like, well, let's look for stories that people don't know about that are deeply emotionally charged, and then we can create a story that everyone wants to see out of it. It's almost exploitative in a way because it's become a
Oh,
thing.
for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
only because it's become a thing. Like if it were just like we want to tell stories about these people groups or demographics that you don't really know about, people with AIDS, people who have different gender expression,
Yeah.
all of those
And
things.
this
It's
one's
like,
like
yeah,
all about mental disability and stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
It is.
it's
Yeah.
I think it's an important story. It's something that I'm sure that we need more of, but that's not the purpose.
I do think that about this movie a lot. I think the way it paints these disabilities is, I think exploitative is a good way to put it. I don't love the portrayals of like kind of these different disorders and disabilities and stuff. But
See, I don't find it exploitative, but I think we'll get into that. I wanted to know what Jaden
Yeah.
thought overall about this.
Of the movie,
Yeah.
I didn't like it very much. So I think it's taking advantage of a situation to make money or to get awards, and I just don't. I think there's movies that do it properly and tell stories like you were saying, like correct, and I mean stories like this should be told, but I think there's a certain point where things are taken advantage of, and I think that's kind of what this did.
yeah, no, that's kind of where I fall on this. It just feels like a bad way of telling a really important story.
Yeah.
And that's my issue with it. Is not the content itself. It's like
Like,
Or like the
like you
narrative
said, like
itself.
Sean Penn, Dakota Fanning, and Michelle Pfeiffer all do. Like I think almost all the actors in this movie do a great job. It's not that. I don't know. The whole basis of it just kind of bothers
Yeah.
me a little.
It's how they lead into the dialogue, the setup that they the context of the story that they're putting in each little plot point that leads to it is it feels clunky, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. There's a lot of like gotcha moments is what I wrote down. It's like
Yeah.
like they set it up like the one where Turner, the opposing counsel, is like, well, what happens when Lucy goes through puberty? Like, what is he going to bring any knowledge to these sensitive subjects? And the woman was like, yeah, or because it was the neighbor, right? Or was
Yeah.
it the doctor?
it's
No,
it's the neighbor's character. She's like, would any
Yeah,
father
Annie.
have any relevant input on that situation?
yeah.
She was
And
like,
he like hung his head like, got me."
gotcha.
Like-
Yeah, no,
like-
you're so right.
Oh, no.
Like, but it was like, duh, dumb. But that wouldn't have been like a good point for him. It was like a general point, but the fact that that's the only one that they showed was like, it takes away all of the nuance of what they're talking about in the first place.
Yeah. So I want to talk more about the just the look of the movie, like the cinematography, like how it's made. I think I've said this before. I do not enjoy handheld cam, or like, this isn't quite shaky cam, but it's like too much of it. It's like, put your camera on a tripod. There's
Well,
only
not even a tripod, like a steady cam.
Yeah,
like
just
there's
do
so many
something.
apparatus for
Especially
this.
in the court scenes. Like it was just so cutty and just like all over
Yeah.
the place. Like every 2 seconds the camera would change, and it was frustrating and kind of
Yeah.
difficult to watch, honestly.
I think it works for one scene where the baby's just born, Lucy's born, and he's getting diapers for her,
Yeah.
and it's like it's a really kind of like it's a, like I felt a lot during that scene.
Yeah.
I was like, I felt like uncomfortable, and like the camera work kind of helps that. It
Yeah.
like lends itself to that because it's like it's this handheld cam and it's bouncing around and they keep like zooming in and out, and it like kind of, I think for that part it sort of fit the scene because it's like it's uncomfortable filmmaking and it's an uncomfortable scene and this is me like really trying to be like
Yeah.
try and
I
find something to
understand,
like
yeah.
about this, but I cannot stand the way this movie is made. It is so hard to watch, and it's so distracting from like what is taking place like actually on screen. Like it does these like zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out. It reminds me of that movie. This is Jaden's favorite movie of all time. It's like was it Jeffrey Who Lives at Home?
Jeff Who Lives at Home. It's not my favorite movie.
Dude, you
Saying
talk
that-
you talk about
I talked about it
it
like twice because you mentioned it. I was like, oh, I like
yeah,
that movie.
is true. He told me one time
Yeah.
about it, and every time
I was like, they smoke weed. So
Yeah.
I like it. Dude. It's a
every
good
time
movie.
every time that movie comes up, I'm like, oh, Jaden's favorite movie. but it reminds me
I've
of
seen it
that
once.
'cause I don't like they do the same. It's the same filmmaking technique, and it's
Yeah.
this zoom in, zoom out, and it's this handheld cam, and it's bouncing everywhere, and
It's just bad.
it's so distracting.
And like it's like in the beginning when he's like separating like the sugars and stuff like that. It seems like a very slow pace of like what they do in like Kingsman. They like cut the camera to everything,
Oh
like
my
all the
God.
weapons and stuff. It's just like really slow
or like
pace.
who's the guy who does like Hot Fuzz and
Yeah.
it's like that where
Guy
it's like
Ritchie.
yeah
Those types of
Where it's
movies
like-
too.
it's like okay, let's head to the pub, and it's like boom, keys, go, get him off the
Yeah.
counter, and open the door, hand on the doorknob,
Yeah.
open the door, shut the door, open the car door, keys in the ignition, boom, boom, drive,
Shut
drive,
the
drive.
door, yeah.
Put foot on the pedal, and then it's like arrive at the pub. It's like I know that if you've seen that movie, you literally know in your
Yeah,
head
exactly that
literally
scene.
played it. Like I know that because like that's how those movies are.
So that's
Yeah.
actually a very specific technique. That's it's not a very old technique because of how cost prohibitive it was to do with film. It's more recent, and it was really popularized by Darren Aronofsky's Requiem for a Dream. It's called hip hop editing. So in a normal feature-length film, you'll have somewhere between 600 and 700 cuts. In Requiem for a Dream, you had 2,000. And that is exactly like what this was. Like, and I think with the thing, like, when you actually watch a lot of films, there's not a lot of zooms.
Yeah.
Just in general. And so when you do zooms like that and like the handheld thing, it comes off as a family, you know, it's a family camera. It's an amateur working a camera for the first time, like, ooh, zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out. It's like a novelty, and it plays exactly like that. That's why, and it still isn't it isn't a technique that most directors use at all. The only types of zooms that you're really ever gonna get are dolly zooms, and those are the ones where the camera is moving forward at the same time that the zoom lens is zooming out, so you get that weird change of depth of perspective, like
Right.
it's very unsettling. You don't really get a lot of zooms in the first place because it's just we set up the frame with very specific intent. It's really hard to keep that when you do zoom. You know, dollies and tracking shots, all of those things are a lot easier, especially for lighting. Because when you change the zoom, you're actually changing the depth of field. You're changing the lighting as well.
Right.
It's something really, really difficult to control. So film generally isn't made that way.
That's why I agree with Jaden when he said that this movie looks sloppy, and that's a really good way to describe it. Is it looks like kind of like dad holding the camera, filming the family at the family reunion or something. It feels like that, and it
Yeah.
feels like someone messing around with the camera all the time.
And I think that's the point actually, because this, especially in like the first quarter where he's playing around with Lucy, in the park.
Yeah.
Like it almost feels like that. The whole first quarter of the film basically feels like a 90s music video.
Yeah, you're not wrong, dude. You're so right. It's
And like because there's a couple more reasons on top of that. Did you notice
What
how
do you
many?
think of when you think of 90s music videos?
I think of post production slow mo.
I just think of like
Okay,
Biggie Smalls.
thank
like
you for
Tupac.
saying
It's
that.
like very different. I'm like, there's no like the strippers in this. Like,
I wrote that down like they get into like a Lucy. What is Sean Sam? the name of the movie. Sorry. Sorry, Sam and Lucy, they get in like a pillow fight at one point, and it's all like this weird slow mo, like you
Yeah.
said, like post production slow motion. I'm like,
I wanna
what is
say-
happening here?
I want to say in the first, and why I say specifically in the first quarter of the film is that's the only time that they do the slow mo. It's the only time they do those freeze frames too.
right.
Almost always after those post production slow mos, they end on a freeze frame. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
just like
It's so odd and it's so jarring.
Yeah.
I think.
it's weird.
Yeah,
It's,
and the reason it doesn't work is because you can tell that it's post production because there are programs that will make slow mo for you in
Yeah.
a video editor, but you can't add frames that aren't there. So
That's what
all
I'm
it
saying,
does
yeah.
is it tracks pixel to pixel where they move in a computer program and just adds the blur lines.
Right,
So
right.
It's so ugly.
It was
It's like-
very evident to me that
uneasy.
this was something that was done, like you said, like post production. Like this was not. I think when it was originally filmed, it was not the intent, because otherwise they would have just filmed it with like a higher frame rate. That way they could actually slow it down. It was very clear that this was like I don't know, maybe it's a studio thing, maybe it's a executive producer thing, but I don't think it was the vision of the director to be like, we'll do this in slow mo, but we'll just do it in the worst way possible. Like I don't think that was the intent.
I wouldn't be
so-
surprised. Like it almost feels like like a Ken Burns documentary when it's talking about like you're talking about like dramatizing like documentary footage
Right.
or like photos. Like that's kind of the quality that this is. It's
I like that you bring up it's like a '90s music video. One of the reasons I really like this recommendation to watch it is it did take me back because I don't know that I've seen a we were kind of talking about like '90s nostalgia like before we started recording, and it's like this movie really kind of took me back to kind of like the whole '90s look, because I mean I know this comes out like 2001,
yeah,
but it's clearly a part of it's you're coming off the tail end of the '90s. It's the same difference.
yeah. It feels the same thing.
Very very early 2000s. Was
There's a
strange
Starbucks on
culture.
every corner.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I did like watching this because it made me feel like, oh man, because I was a kid in the '90s. And
Yeah, I mean,
it made
during
me
that-
feel like I was watching like, oh, I was like,
Yeah.
this is what I grew up with. So I do like this for that reason. I got a little nostalgia, going on during this movie. I just wish it delivered that nostalgia in a better way.
Yeah, and the other reason I call it a '90s pop music video is because the music, the soundtrack, in the first quarter, especially again, it feels oppressive.
So
I
do we want to
hate it.
move on? So we're moving on from the look. I think. Do we want to talk about the score of this?
Yeah, I have this whole section of style. Like all of
Yeah.
this lends to the same. To
Yeah,
the
you're
same
right.
Point.
Oh, it is. I think it's tough to like listen to this movie. I think the score is
I
terrible.
mean, how many films are just gonna overuse the Beatles in like in their projects? I just don't get it, and I
not-
don't like it, and it's so frustrating that it happens all the time, and it's annoying.
Yeah, and it's not even the Beatles.
It's just all covers. They're like not good, and like
Yeah.
I don't like any of it.
yeah, they
think
couldn't.
the-
And then they
couldn't get
meant like the lady's
originals.
all like, "Oh, people think Lucy in the Sky Diamond is like named after a drug. It is. It literally stands for LSD. That's what it's named after.
Yeah.
You named your daughter after acid.
The
Yeah,
other thing I
after
think
a
about
stimulant.
is if you listen
I'm
to
sorry,
our
no,
up review,
psychoactive.
Yeah.
the up review, the music I found for it, like I literally just searched for like happy music,
Yeah.
and it's like it's that same thing. Like that's what goes on throughout this whole movie. It's just like it's sort of like this sort of it gets you to feel a certain way because we're just gonna bash you over the head with like, oh, it's fun little guitar music with like a little, and then there's like this like flute music, this little pipe. It's like do 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 do,
Yeah,
and it's like
how did it go again?
you can listen to listen to the recording after he releases, and you can hear it again. But it's like everything about the soundtrack to this is it first of all, it feels like it never really fits. It's always just kind of happy tones to kind of make you feel like, hey, remember this is like supposed to be kind of a joyful movie.
yeah.
Sad,
That's
though.
what I'm saying. Is like the tone of this movie. We'll get into it more. That's my problem. Is like it's like they have this serious subject matter and they're trying to tell like a real story, but the tone of this movie doesn't fit it at all.
Yeah, not at the
And
beginning.
part of that is the score. Like the score does not fit the tone of this
Yeah,
at all.
yeah, and it's very like it undercuts the drama, and then it also
Absolutely.
ham-fisted throws like you gotta hide your love away, or like the one when he jumps on the subway train. The song that plays right there is. Yeah, like literally, like Lucy in the sky with diamonds.
Right.
Like picks up like big right there, and it's
Sounds
just like,
beautiful.
oh, thank you. I can't wait to listen to that later and cringe. But yeah, it's like his wife, his girlfriend just left him with an infant, and we're on an acid trip journey now, boys. Let's
Yeah, it's so
like
odd.
that's how it felt, and it was like, wow, this is serious and sad, and like it's almost like a bit, but it's okay because he has autistic tendencies. This isn't as serious for him as everybody else. He's on a fun journey now, loving life and loving his
Build
daughter.
my baby little hammock.
Yeah.
And
It's just I think that every time any music plays in this, it's like it's so out of place. It has this movie. I think the biggest problem. This movie has no idea how to tell its story, and it's just
Yeah.
it is all over the place with like kind of trying to set up tension, or it's trying to set up. It uses music to like set the scene, but the music it's using doesn't fit the scene at all. And this is kind of I mean I think the best scores like I'm not saying you don't notice they're there, but like they always complement what's going on. And I think when you have a bad score, it's really easy to see because it's like it's distracting from what's going on, and that's how
Yeah.
I would describe this score. Is very distracting from every scene because it doesn't seem to fit or make sense with any of it.
Yeah, and so the reason that all of these Beatles songs are actually in here is because when they were doing a lot of their research and they were meeting with I think they went to like a specific home. That's actually where they met Brad and Joe, the actors that play versions of themselves. And I wrote them down as the posse the whole time, like his friend group.
You know, about the dude with the mustache, real quick, about his friend group that's in the beginning of the movie.
Oh, yeah,
and then
I-
just never see him again.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody saw that. Like the first video night, like there's one dude right at the end of that scene. He says something about Lucy being smart, and then like when I watched it a second time, I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute! Like you're not in the rest of this movie. Why are you here?" And I thought that was kind of a trip. But the reason that they have Beatles and everything is when they were meeting these people and talking with these people, and Sean Penn was doing a lot of studying for method acting. They encountered a lot of them that they knew all about the Beatles. They loved the Beatles. They loved Beatles lore, and they knew all about the Beatles. And I think it's so cool that they incorporated that as an idea, as nods. But they made it a technique. They made it like a significant portion of the film. They also made it like in some ways like this is dialogue. This is diegetic sound in some ways. Right? Like even though it's a score, and nobody's listening to it. The words are meant to literally be what's on screen, and it's kind of juvenile to think that. Like
Right.
I remember making films like that when I started. Like I made them literally representational of the music, and it's lazy filmmaking. It's not when you're used to making film and understanding how to say things without like literally saying them in the most weird backwards way.
Right.
You move away from those techniques really quickly.
Yeah, I don't love the score to
I
this.
just think this whole movie is kind of lazy, and that just represents it.
Yeah.
Yeah. If
So-
they just kept like how Sean Penn or how Sam talks in like Beatles parables, basically,
Yeah,
that's
and not
cool.
not use the music all the time. It's fine.
Yeah, or not
Yeah.
even use any of them except for maybe one
like
time,
at like the credit scene, like have Lucy the Sky with time.
Actually,
Like,
like,
that would
what
make
is
sense.
the
yeah,
what
or
is
like
the
a piano version
Yeah.
of it.
what is the part where he talks about he's like
or Imagine
With
by
the-
John Lennon. Like that makes sense.
what is the situation he's in where he talks about like how it's not Yoko Ono's fault that they broke up the Beatles and
So
I don't
that was the first. I wrote that one down. That was one moment that got me.
I actually think
there's
that's a good scene. Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of like there's a lot of film scenes in this film that got me like emotionally, and I'm not sure if it's just because I'm getting old or like lately I
Right.
just feel everything.
I mean, yeah, I cried a couple of times. Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
That
So like,
happens.
and that's what's so weird. Like these moments are there for
Yeah.
sure. But
That's
so what it was
that's
is
what's
like,
so confusing about this movie is because it's like it's like almost good.
yeah, I
Like
feel
a
it.
lot, and
Yeah.
then it's like oh my god, and then it's like immediately I'm just like oh this is like it's terrible to look at, it's terrible to listen to, but then it's like yeah they have these great scenes where I'm like I want to talk more about the diaper scene later because that's the
Yeah.
one that like really got me. But sorry,
So-
can you explain what happening? in
Yeah.
that scene?
So what's happening there is it's when he's meeting with the principal and the teacher, and it's the first time we see the really obvious photo that or drawing that Lucy's done where she's much bigger than Sam in her picture of her family.
yeah.
And they're talking about I can't remember exactly how it came up, but it was like have you talked to I don't really remember now, but it was basically like foster family, like that was
Right,
the first
right.
that was the first time where started coming up, like maybe Sam you're not equipped to raise her, and he was like he couldn't I like the parable the Beatles parables as a way of creating a character, because it's like how this person interacts with the world is thinking of parallels to events in the Beatles' lives.
Right.
And for him, it was like, oh yeah, it wasn't Yoko's fault. John wanted to do other things,
Yeah.
and Yoko didn't do that. You could hear it on the White Album. And there's like a lot of like it's a lot of like in what makes Pixar good. And we've talked about those before. They're loaded lines that they're not overly obvious, and they're subtle enough that you still pick everything up, but you're not being spoon fed it.
Yeah, no, I actually, that's why I brought it up because I actually like that scene. Like, I feel like we're just bashing this movie, and I don't want to be like because it does have good stuff in it, and that's one of them. I was like, I feel the same way. It's like, yeah, I got like feelings during that, and I think if you can make me feel feelings, then I think you're doing well as a filmmaker, because that's the point of that scene is to, convey some kind of message, and I think they got that across. I want to talk about. So if we're moving away from kind of the look of the movie and the way it sounds and everything, just scenes that maybe we can all think of like a couple scenes we liked.
Yeah, I have a whole section
yeah.
of the humor because I think the humor is fun here.
Yeah, like I said, there's plenty
Yeah.
of stuff.
There's
So
funny. I had a couple laughs and a couple cries. The motion aspect of this movie is good.
yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
the scene where so Lucy's just been born. He's getting the diapers for her because it's like this terribly awkward scene where he's like trying to pin like a cloth diaper to her, and he uses like
I think it looks more like a T-shirt even.
I don't even know what it is.
I was
but
thinking
I
like
mean,
an apron. Like it could be anything.
it's
I
terribly
guess.
yeah,
awkward, and
exactly.
he tries to pin it to her together with like like those little
A Hertz button.
yeah
is
like a
one of
button
'em.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it falls off her, and it's just like it's so like I was so uncomfortable watching the beginning of this movie, especially once Lucy's born and he's taking care of Lucy, and he's like in the grocery store or whatever. He's trying to buy diapers, and this is a part where I think like the handheld cam and kind of it moving around a lot, like kind of lent to the kind of uncomfortable feeling that scene is kind of supposed to convey.
Yeah.
He doesn't really know what he's doing. The baby won't stop crying, and he ends up getting his neighbor for help. But I was like, it was like I'd been holding my breath. I was relieved when they skipped forward in time and Lucy was no longer an infant because it
Yes.
was so uncomfortable to watch someone who's so ill-equipped to care for a baby
Yeah.
continue to do it. And I was like, if this is the whole movie, like this is like, I mean, like I felt it like in my chest. I was like, this is so uncomfortable.
It
Like,
is bad.
which I think the reason I felt uncomfortable is because, like Calvin said, like all the performances are good. Like I was convinced that Sean Penn like was actually portraying someone who had a mental disability, and like
Yeah.
and it made me so uncomfortable to watch. So like I said, like I think that that there's plenty of knocks against this movie. The performance, especially in that scene, like really made me feel like gross watching it. I was like, oh
Yeah.
please let this be over.
Yeah.
Which to me is like kind of the point. It was I think it conveyed it really well, and when they moved on to when Dakota Fanning's character is like an adult, like not an adult, when she's like 7, I was like, thank God, because I can't take any more of this infant stuff, because it made me feel like, oh my gosh, like this is so uncomfortable, and that's because like the performances were so good.
Yeah.
Huh.
I get to the point. Like there's a lot of uncomfortable. I think even after she was aged, I was still very uncomfortable.
You're right. I
With
just
the,
like yeah.
like with her help, with him helping her with her schoolwork, and like just the fact that she had like that weird hammock bed thing. Like it was just.
Right. Oh my
I-
gosh.
Yeah,
right.
none of it. I mean, the very like I think it's the second note that I took. I was like, okay, so he shouldn't have a child.
Right.
Like I just don't think that that's. There should be somebody stepping in like right when this kid's born to do
I
something.
I
and-
totally get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But back to things we like.
I do like I like that aspect of the movie. I think it makes a good point. Like it's a big plot, like a big part of the plot of the movie. I think they executed it well.
Okay. Yeah. I see. That's. I felt like I guess tone. Like I was like, oh no, we hate more still. We found
No,
more to hate.
yeah.
No.
But no, like I'd say I'm like my favorite is one of the characters of the posse. I don't. It's the only name that I don't remember, but it's the paranoid dude.
He's awesome.
Oh, he's
Yeah.
so funny. He has some really
He's the one. He says he
good-
has like PTSD or because don't they mention that he was in the military or something? Doesn't he talk about being in a war and that's why he's paranoid?
I don't know.
I don't remember that one. I don't remember them saying why he had anything.
Maybe I made that up. I don't know. I think I thought they mentioned something. I thought he mentioned something about the government or the army or something, and so from then on, I just assumed that he was like PTSD and like that was like kind of his like shtick, like his disability.
Yeah, I don't remember. But yeah,
My bad. Maybe I'll find out. We'll figure it out.
But yeah, my favorite part with him is when Rita is interviewing all of them to see how they would perform as witnesses, and he's like, whoa, you didn't say anything about a tape recorder. Like, no, I'm just. He's like, who's listening? Well, me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't
I
say
love that.
anything about a tape recorder. And she's like, well, I mean, sometimes it's necessarily, well, now I need to talk to my lawyer.
Yeah, no, that's maybe the most comical part of the movie.
Yeah.
I love that scene too.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
the perfect where you cut on humor lines is really important to drive home the effect of it. And that was one edit that I was like, oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice, that worked perfectly. That was
Yeah,
the
that's
exact right
that's a really
moment.
good scene. And like what she's talking to the one guy who like remembers every movie and the date it came out. And
Yeah.
she like, it's almost like the lawyer, Michelle Pfeiffer's character Rita. She's like so over interviewing these guys because like they never give her the information she actually wants, and
Yeah.
she's like kind of like, oh my god, let me just get through this, which is kind of how she is the first time she meets Sam when he's seeking counsel. It's kind of the same way because she's like more concerned with the next appointment she has or a phone call that's
Yeah.
coming in, and she pretty much brushes him off like right away.
Oh my god, and like how she's interviewing those awful parents who neither one of them want custody or whatever.
Oh my god, that's
Dude,
what I'm
that's
saying.
bad.
That's
Yeah.
it's like it's so weird to me. It's like that's what I'm saying. I think this movie it tries to it tries to tell a story, and I think Calvin had mentioned like it's like kind of ham-fisted,
Yeah.
where it's like it's clearly that Sam wants to have custody of his daughter, and he'll do anything it takes, even though he's like overcoming this disability. And then in the very next room is a couple that like don't even want their kid. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
like I get the message, like don't.
That's
you know.
actually the theme throughout the whole film. The one dad, Connor's dad, is like, this stuff, Connor.
Right, yeah.
And he talks about like, I think he could make that child feel better, and neither of you wants custody. That couple, which was kind of that was,
Yeah.
like, goofy.
I think that's
felt like.
It's like a little over the top, I think, trying to point out how good he is at being a dad. Like, 'cause
Yeah,
he is.
he has no faults.
Yeah.
Is basically what the film says.
And,
but then
and
like
they surround him by characters who are bad at it to
Yeah.
kind of really drive home the fact that like he's good, and then the fact that now his daughter's being taken away from him. It's like it's kind of like this built-in like kind of loop of, let's like of sympathy for him. And so how could
Yeah.
this bad thing be happening to him? Because we've clearly seen throughout the whole movie how good he is and how bad other parents are, to kind of reinforce that sense of like, how great a dad he is.
Yeah, yeah, and so same thing with Rita and Willie, but then you get the foster family, and they're really nice. They're really loving and caring, but the film vilifies them because they're bad. They're trying to take Lucy away, despite the fact that they're giving her all of these wonderful things. They're the only people in the film that you can be like, oh yeah, they would be they're a nice couple.
Yeah.
They would raise a decent person because they are decent people.
That's
But-
Laura Dern, right? That's,
Yeah, Laura Dern and whoever the hell she's married to. 'cause
That
he-
guy's on screen for 30 seconds.
Yeah, he's like, give us easy there, Sam, something
Yeah.
like that. It's
Yeah.
it's completely pointless.
So
Yeah,
on,
he
on
could
your
not
point,
be in the film.
on your point there, she delivers this line when he brings her back after Dakota Fanning runs away to his apartment because he'd moved in close to them, and she's like, "Give me my daughter," and like she sounded so rude, but it was like so unnatural, and like it didn't
Yeah.
feel like it belonged there at all. I'm like, she doesn't seem like the kind of person who would act like that. Like,
Yeah, well, and she says, give me my daughter, and then give me Lucy. Like,
Yeah.
like it was like, oh, I've misspoken because she's not.
but yeah,
Yeah,
it felt so unnatural to me. It's
Yeah,
just-
well, almost all of Laura Dern's stuff feels really, really unnatural. Like,
yeah,
and like not even like her acting can save it because it's so over the top. There's that one like where he shows up with the dogs, and she's like, Sam, you're early, and she's just going off on him, and she's like, what are you doing here? Like you left, and you're like, that's why we have scheduled visits because you're trying to come back now, and
yeah.
you were absent, and she's like, I will do everything in my power to keep that little girl from getting hurt again. And it's just like the way they framed that, they have her face on the left hand side, and like the house is in the background, and they keep like zooming in and out, and I was like, man, this is like, give her a mic. And
Right.
and she starts growling. You got a pretty good black metal music video going. Like,
You guys talk about how you think it's unnatural. The scene it's towards the end where Laura Dern and Sam are talking, and he has Lucy, and he's like asking, he's like, will you help me? Like, can I keep her? Will you help me? Like, that's the scene that I think it works. Like, I thought that
Yeah,
I think she's good in it. Sean Penn's good in it, and I think that's another one of the. That's what I'm saying. This movie, it has a couple like good heartfelt scenes that are emotionally charged,
So-
and they really work. And I think that's one of them. But then it has all this other stuff in
Yeah.
the way of it. Like,
Yeah, it's like that scene feels like supernatural and like pleasing to me because that seems like who Laura Dern's character is. Someone who's gonna.
you
take,
said supernatural.
yeah.
I think you meant
Yeah, like it was very
super-
natural.
It was
very
very
natural. Okay,
you said
not-
supernatural.
not
I
like-
was like mystical or something.
No.
Sorry, that was just. It was,
Yeah.
I know what you meant. The way you said it was really funny though.
But so that's what I'm saying. It's like that part right there feels right to me, and like her being villainized the rest of the movie just doesn't seem correct. I'm like, she's literally just trying to help out this kid, and this
Yeah.
movie's trying to make her the bad guy. And it makes
Yeah.
no sense.
and we're supposed to care about Rita, who is the scum for most of the film. Like, she's literally like,
A very
the-
bad mom.
yeah, and the very stereotypical lawyer type. I'm only looking out for myself.
Yeah,
She's
and
like
got dope house though.
she's. I
So
think
dope.
I'm not saying Michelle Pfeiffer is bad. That character is terrible. I have a lot of problems, and I want to get into earlier just kind of how they treat these people with mental disabilities. But if we have more fun scenes, we can do that first.
I mean, I really enjoy the scene where she kicks the jelly beans. I thought that was great.
That is like that.
Yeah.
That's one of like the humanizing sweet moments that she has,
Yeah.
because she tells her son, she's like, I got a bag of like the lemon jelly beans you
She's
like,
just
but
picking
it's
out all
just
the-
herself picking the lemon jelly
she
beans.
just grabs
out.
a
Yeah.
handful and puts them in her pocket.
She
Yeah.
does that a couple times. She puts different candy in her pocket.
And then
at
she
one
just,
point.
just
Okay,
slamming marshmallows.
so that's what I
Yeah.
wanted to talk about. One of the other things I really like, and again, this goes along with how they made Sam as a character. They made him speak in Beatles parables. It's heavily implied, but not said, that she has an eating disorder.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
Yeah, me
okay,
neither.
can
Yeah.
you elaborate more on that? 'Cause that's
So-
interesting.
So she just grabs a whole handful of jelly beans after she like grabs one and eats it, and then she just grabs all of them.
Yeah.
She is running up the stairs like, my heart rate's at 120, Sam, gotta get up to 125, or it doesn't mean anything, or it doesn't matter. She is, let's see, what other things
She
does
eats just
do?
crazy fast every time she eats anything.
He literally
Yeah.
says that.
Yeah.
He says, "Why do you eat so fast?" And then like 2 scenes later, like, "Oh, you're eating slower. That's good.
Yeah.
Good to chew." She has an omelet, white eggs, no oil, no butter, no fat,
Right.
extra
okay. Yeah. Yep.
mushrooms.
Right after she tells Sam to not be impossible. 'cause-
Yeah, I thought that
Yeah.
was funny. And then
That's
she's
really
also
good. That's a really good thing to bring
yeah,
up.
and
I
then
like
she's
that.
also binge eating the marshmallows when she's so upset about Willie.
Right. Okay.
Because like so food and that control that's what eating disorders really are. It's
Right.
when you're out of control, this is what you can control, and it's other parts of self-expression and self-worth, those types of things they play in, but that's how they manifest. And so that's why it's one of those nice things. It's not over the top.
No, it's
Neither
very
of you-
subtle. I didn't.
Yeah.
notice it
That's
at
why
all.
I'm glad you brought it up. That's why I wanted to elaborate on it because I didn't catch that, and that's a cool little like kind of wrinkle into this movie.
Yeah,
It's kind of like-
exactly.
Because the movie is mostly about Sam and his disability and how he's dealing with that in real time. But then it's like even people who you don't kind of suspect have a disability, and it's like she's dealing with her own thing too. So that's a good way to do it. It's like not only is it this character, it's like everyone kind of has something they're dealing with. So it's
Yeah.
that's a cool wrinkle. I like that.
And he's agoraphobic because she said that she hasn't left her house in 20.
Oh, okay,
in,
right,
in
right.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was
Yeah,
like,
everyone
I
has
was
their
like,
kind of own
yeah.
thing in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because she doesn't even the neighbor
Annie.
Annie. Yeah, she's the one who doesn't leave her house, and she was doing the piano lessons for Lucy and everything, and she's like actually kind of the character witness that the lawyer really wants, and it's like kind of a dramatic tension, I guess, in the film where it's like she won't do it, and then she finally arrives, and she totally like just like crushes that prosecuting lawyer, Turner. Yeah, it's kind
The
of
guy
like
who
these-
lost his toupee. That line
It's-
was also
Yeah, I
funny.
did. I
Yeah.
forgot about that.
I'm not gonna lie, like that whole thing where she's answering all of his questions, they're all like real softballs. Like it's
Yeah,
Of
that's-
course- of
I
course
literally
she's-
I
yeah.
literally wrote that. Like that's like to the ham-fistedness with some of the setups is like you're literally like lobbing softballs.
yeah,
So, like,
of course she's gonna crush these questions with a great answer. I think the writers, again, like Jaden said, I think they're lazy at this point. They're like they basically all they needed, they had the dialogue for her to say, and they're like, okay, how do we get that question? That way she can crush this, and
Yeah.
and it could have been more well done, I think.
yeah,
But-
and
but,
what's
yeah.
weird is they did set it up well. They set up Turner as being a very human and caring
Yeah,
character.
his
like,
his line about about Michelle Pfeiffer being there just for like to talk about in like a lunch meeting or whatever, but
Yeah.
he's there and like he actually cares because he doesn't want to see the kid back in the courtroom.
I like
again.
what I like that line a lot. He's
Yeah.
like you're here for
An
an
award
award
at a
He's like,
luncheon.
yeah, he's like I'm the one who sees the kids come back. So like I actually think his character is pretty close to maybe how an actual person would act.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, and then they basically he's toothless the whole rest of the film.
Mhm.
He like his entire defense is basically like can Sam how can Sam add, can Sam multiply, like do you even math, bro? Like that's
Yeah,
like,
you're right.
like that's like you couldn't raise a kid up to age 7, but now math is more important than like.
Right.
Like that's the reason you can't be a father.
He says that because he's like, okay, so you're good being a father this way, but what happens when she needs geometry? I was like, you know how many parents, like, fully functioning parents, like, don't know geometry? Like,
Yeah.
I'm saying like, so I was homeschooled and my mom helped me with geometry, but she was also like reading the book with me. I mean, everyone needs to get like that you kind of got to jar your memory and
They literally had
relearn it.
an entire show about this ran for years with Jeff Foxworthy
Yeah,
hosting. Are
exactly.
you smarter than a 5th grader? And like nobody was because
Yeah.
kids are smart as shit. Dude.
Yeah, and because that's why we have an education system, is because we have appointed someone to that role.
Yeah.
We have
Like,
books for those
the
reasons.
whole
if they
thing about
wanna
like
learn
how
more.
like it'd be hard for him to find a tutor. Most public schools supply tutors and things like that.
Yeah,
It just
it was
doesn't
so
make sense.
it was
Yeah.
so odd to me. Especially his geometry line. Like, oh, are you gonna help her with geometry? It's like, well, I mean, like most parents are. I mean, I'm going through college now, so like I am studying. Like I'm in school, so like I know this stuff. But like years from now, like, am I gonna like remember everything I learned? No.
No.
When I'm a parent, I'm absolutely gonna need to like double check and research before I like help my kid out with stuff. So I thought that was such a weird line. Like,
Yeah.
it's like no one knows it.
Yeah.
And he's knocking Sam for all this stuff that he doesn't know. It's like most parents already don't know that.
Yeah.
It's so odd.
Yeah, and it's not, and even with that line, he still makes more sense. And that was actually, I read a couple reviews from the time. Roger Ebert wrote, his final line of his review is, you can't have a story about heroes and villains where the villains are the only ones making sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, and the thing is about the courtroom, but they bring up all these like these things like, well, she's gonna be smarter than you.
I think we
things
should.
like that.
Do we just want to do courtroom talk? Because I think there's a lot of good stuff that takes place. So I think we
Yeah.
should this whole section. Let's just talk about what goes on in the courtroom because I
Okay.
think
Yeah.
there's good stuff
Yeah.
in those scenes.
So like what I was gonna say is they bring up all these things like she's gonna be smarter than you and all this stuff. I just feel like there's like way like different aspects like are more serious than that like would cause problems. Like what happens if she like hurts herself and like you need to get her to the hospital? Like what do you know how to take care of that? And like there's certain, like she can trick it. Like she obviously tricks him into like abducting her basically.
Right.
Like she can
Yeah.
trick him into doing like basically whatever she wants like her whole life.
Yeah, they keep
Yeah.
referring to it as a kidnapping. And
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah, it's more like an adult napping.
Yeah, right? the other thing I want to talk about is they do an interview with this woman who ends up becoming a doctor, and it's played by Mary Steenburgen, who we all know she's the mom in
2008 Step Brothers.
Step Brothers, which is funny because it's like,
That's her claim to fame.
yeah, I'm just saying it's funny.
She's been in like a lot of other stuff too, but
Yeah.
that's how I recognize her.
Yeah, as soon as she popped on the screen, I was like, "Oh my God, she's so young in this!" Like,
Yeah.
I was like, and I had to look up. I was like, "I know she's in something. Like, what is it?" And I did my research, and she's in Step Brothers. But she talks about because she's like on the stand, and she's being cross-examined by the two lawyers, and she talks about how she became a doctor, and she worked really hard for this, and her mom, who is disabled as well, like has a mental disability, was kind of like her drive to like become successful. And then the other lawyer, Turner, kind of interjects. He's like, well, wasn't it really your grandparents who raised you?
Yeah, you lived with you. Was it fair to say, since you lived with your grandparents, wasn't it fair to say that they were doing most of the parent work?
Yeah, and you know what is one thing that's weird about that scene is she tries like 3 times to say that her mother raised her, and it keeps getting cut off, and I don't know if that's on purpose.
It was meant to create this kind of
Or-
chaotic,
yeah.
like,
I-
the system is trying to keep us down,
Yeah.
like, but we'll get out. We'll because that scene ends when he calls Rita to the bench and reprimands her for talking over and making dumb points and irrelevant points because she called out Turner's mother-in-law living with them,
Right.
and she gets called to the bench by the judge to be reprimanded for anything that's immaterial to the case. And I don't actually remember her name, but in the show, but the one who's being
Mary Steenburgen's
Yeah, Mary
character. I don't
Steenburgen's
actually know her name.
yeah.
either.
And
'cause
she's
it's-
like,
she's
"Let-"
kind of a quick character that's in and
Yeah.
out, so I don't actually remember either.
yeah, but she's like, finally, let the record show my mother.
Yeah, she keeps saying that.
And then right then, it cuts to Rita with her arms crossed, like girl power
Right.
pose type thing. Like, yeah, see, we got it. We stuck it to him.
I almost
We
thought
made
it was
the better point.
I almost thought it was like bad editing because I thought that maybe they had filmed the scene where she says "let the record show" and she finishes the line, and then like they did the take a couple more times and just put a bunch of different takes together. That's why I
Yeah.
thought it was like really awkward.
It
'Cause
is.
I think it's
It is
edited
bad.
really weird.
It is bad editing. You're absolutely right, and I think they did it on purpose.
Yeah, I think it's odd. I like the message that she's getting across, and I like that they have her in the scene to explain that, like, even though my mother had a disability, she still is the one who was my primary like caretaker. I just think it's edited really awkwardly.
Yeah, but it's also like the fifth time that they've said this exact sentiment. Like all you need is love. You don't need to be a competent
Love is
parent.
all you need.
Yeah, all
Yeah.
you need to do is be present, and how we contrast that with Rita, like, being a great provider, but not being present. Like you need both. Like it can't be one or the other.
Yeah.
But to say that, love is the only thing, is kind of childish, which is
It
Yeah.
is.
There's another scene. They're questioning. I think it's one of the counselors who played a role in like having Lucy removed from like Sam's custody.
I think she was actually either a psychiatrist or a psychologist specifically for Sam.
Yeah, because she sits in on like some of the visitation stuff, so she's involved in this
Mhm.
case. And dude, it's so awkward. Again, it's like Rita is cross-examining her, and she brings up like uh, kind of like her home life and very personal things that's going on. Like
Yeah.
gets her to cry, and
Oh,
Sam
yeah.
even mentions it. He's like, "You shouldn't have made her cry," and the lawyer's like, "No, that's good for us." But it's like it's like really, I think it's a really awkward scene, and it's kind of it doesn't like fit. Again, this movie is tonally doesn't know what it is. It doesn't fit the tone of the movie. It's a very weird scene that I think that
Did
shouldn't
not
be in it.
age
Like,
well, and
yeah.
it did not age well. I think that was like I laughed the first time she said it, because like, have you ever made mistakes that are huge, mistakes that made you feel like
Oh,
you're
I was talking about like your son OD'd.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, she
Yeah.
didn't. She hadn't said it yet. Like
Oh.
it's before that she says the OD. Have you ever made mistakes that make you feel like you're retarded? And I laughed because I was like, you can't say that. Like,
It's-
I can't even imagine someone back then in the 2000s saying that as like a respectable point to make that wouldn't be insinuated as being badgering the witness or attacking them.
That's
Like,
what I thought.
those
yeah.
things, it wouldn't have flown back then, even whether or not that term was more accepted in common language.
That they use that word really cavalier in this movie, which
Yeah.
is shocking. Which is why I think it's sort of. I talked earlier about how I think it's kind of exploitative, and it kind of they use like this disability as a way to kind of sell the film, because they're really like they're not very sensitive to like the actual disability. They're not very sensitive to the people around it, and they throw this terminology around it. Like, I get that this movie came out 20 years ago, and you could say things like that, and it was more widely accepted. But it's like if you're trying to tell a story that's sort of supposed to make you sympathize with like these disabilities and make you kind of feel for these characters, they use terms that even back then you shouldn't have been saying. Like they're like they say retard very cavalier, and like there's a scene where Rita says it like to Sam's face, like they're going up the stairs.
Yeah.
And they're gonna like do all the interviews with his friends and stuff, like character witnesses, and like she says that like to his face, and
Yeah.
it's like I think it did not age well. Is a very good way to describe the dialogue in this movie, especially surrounding like mental disabilities. I was kind of shocked by how willy nil they were with like what they said. I was very surprised.
Yeah, but then to the point that she brings up the woman's OD as relevant. It's not relevant at all. Just because you can have those. Okay, so I don't know if I want to say this now or get to the end, but like the message of this film makes this false equivalence between people with disabilities and people who make mistakes. People who are well equipped for parenting but still make mistakes. But single mistakes don't make them good or bad parents, they just make them human. And the movie is trying to play on the fact that we can all sympathize with making mistakes to argue that Sam is a competent enough father.
Right.
Like that's the problem I have, is like, oh yeah, like why don't you can always think of a time that you've made a mistake, and that's why he should have full custody of a child that he's not equipped to have. Like that,
Right.
it doesn't work. And the moment like you can feel that, and the moment you think about it a little bit too long, it's like what are they even? How are they coming to this conclusion? Like how did they come to this rationally before they wrote the film?
Yeah. Do we want to talk about I guess problems we have? I think we
Think about
we have good insights. I want to because I my biggest problem with this movie I want to talk about is this seems like no one on the earth knows what a mental disability is. Like no one knows about it, and so the fact that he's acting this way is like so foreign to them, and they're like, of course he should just everything he's doing is because he's bad. Everything Sam is doing is because he's ill-equipped to be a parent, and not because of his mental disability. So I want to talk about like there's a scene where he gets kind of picked up by a prostitute, and which is weird because he's the one who's getting picked up on. He's not picking one up, and no one like gets that that like it seems like they don't understand that like he was just trying to be friendly to someone, and that turned into him, getting arrested for being involved with a prostitute. And it's like even the police they let him go not because he has a mental disability. They're like, this is the first like John I've ever met who like kind of really thinks he doesn't get what's going on, like he doesn't realize it. But they'd never mention like, oh, like he has a mental disability, that's why this happened. Like no one acknowledges that. And it's even like throughout the whole movie, like the way his lawyer Rita talks to him, it's like it's almost like she's like doesn't understand that like he's not competent in the way like your average adult is. And I think the whole movie is that way. And this for a movie that I think is trying to tell a story about mental disability, it like kind of every character is like doesn't even realize that it's even a thing. So that's what I think.
Yeah, every time anyone communicates with him, it's like you like. How do you not know how to do this?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, like when she's like he's talking to the therapist, where he's like, because it's a court case, you understand like the confident, like us being, I forget what the word is, but like the doctor-patient confidentiality or whatever is like, waived, and like, dude, like like he doesn't know what that means. Like,
there's the first judge that he interacts with who like when he loses custody, or no, when he's, is it when he loses? I can't remember. The first judge he talks to, the female judge, and she's talking to him like he's a regular person. It's like, I've interacted with people with mental disabilities. Like, I understand that there's a way and a way to communicate with them. And it feels like no one in this movie understands that, which is so weird because, like, that's what this movie is about. And it feels like no one gets it. So it's so weird.
And so I feel the same. I understand everything you're saying, but I feel the opposite. I think what's nice is that they're not making it about his disability. They're they're treating him like a human and treating him like a person. And I think that's actually a more noble way of portraying them. And I think the problem then you see is that you can't treat someone like this. Like it highlights the fact that you cannot treat someone with a mental disability as a human and then also make the case that they are competent to have a child.
I agree with what you're saying. I think you can treat a person with a disability like a human, but also understand kind of the limitations that surround that, and you can still have like a positive, good interaction with them without like that's not a thing. I just think there's a disconnect, I think, between all the characters in this film and when they talk to Sam, because Sam is treated just like a regular guy. That's why the prostitution scene makes no sense to me, because
I would think it makes no sense because why did he get arrested when literally nothing happened?
Yeah,
like that's really the like, Roger even wrote like it's the first time that anyone's ever been arrested for solicitation. They said like it's the first time I believe
solicitation. That's the word I wanted to use.
Yeah, but he was like it's the first time I believe that he really didn't know, and it's also like the first time that anyone's been arrested without services being discussed
or payment
paper changing hands. Like
see, that's what I'm saying. Like that's why the way that people interact with Sam makes no sense to me, because like it's so obvious that like I mean it's clear that his character has like shortcomings that you need to act and treat him a certain way, and it's like no one in the actual film realizes that. They all just talk to him, and they like Rita, she, like we said, like, oh, could you stop being difficult, or like the I think a good example of when it works is when when they go to like that Bob's Burgers or something like that.
Yeah, Bob's Big Boy.
Yeah, and the waitress doesn't like understand how to deal with him, and that's actually like that actually makes sense. Like if you haven't interacted with a person like
that scene fits.
That's like the one time where they actually like it seems like this is a person who doesn't like know how to interact with Sam
and doesn't know that he is, because he looks like a functioning adult with a 7-year-old daughter.
Which I love that they really set that up throughout the movie. He has a very strict routine. They go to the same place. Everyone knows him. He knows exactly what he's going to do every day, and the whole burger place is clearly put in there to like create tension and a kind of a scene where he's out of his element. But that's like that waitress, the way she interacts with him is like actually how I think a person would interact if they like if they don't know how to interact with someone with a mental disability. But everyone else in the movie just treats him like he's a regular guy, and then they're surprised when he doesn't like react as a regular guy. It's like shocking to them somehow, and I'm like, I have interacted with people with mental disabilities, and like I understand that there's a way you act, and somehow no one in this movie that revolves around a character with a mental disability, they don't know how to act. So like that's like really poor writing on my part, like on their part. Like I think it's like they just don't even understand the premise of their own movie.
Yeah, but I think that's the point. That's why it's a good story to tell, is because so many people don't know how to react or interact with people with mental disabilities, because it's not something that they deal with every day. Like the fact that Rita
Yeah.
is so insensitive is, I think, a good point. Like, okay, yeah, you really need to start to be around these types of people to get into their heads, to understand how they see things, because a lot of us are very callous and think that they're not functioning at all, like they don't have redeeming qualities at all, because they're just annoying and they're just large non-functioning adults. And I think they really do try to set it up like we it's idealistic, it's kind of naive. We all need more love and acceptance for everybody is the
Yeah.
overall message, and I think it works for the way that everyone deals with Sam. But I do see what you mean. Like I do feel like you could have had more of like a single character. Like no, you can't talk to him that
Yeah.
way. Like some
Even
sort of
the-
guidance
yeah,
counselor or like
even-
a government
th-
agent
that's
that
my
should
problem.
clearly be in
That's
charge
my
of
biggest
his life.
problem is the social workers who are involved in this case. They don't even like interact with him the way you should. Like
Oh,
they,
yeah,
like they
yeah.
don't even like.
Mhm.
So my sister is literally going to school for social work, and she has classes where you know, how do you deal with cases that involve like people with mental disabilities? Like it is factual that these kinds of people who are involved in this social work should actually know how to do this. Like that should be like a level of expertise they have. But
Mhm.
even the social workers in this movie, they seem to not understand why he is the way he is. Like it makes it's just it takes me totally out of the movie because like I'm just a regular guy and like I get it. How are all these people who are involved in basically the overall like huge life changing event that is about to take place in Sam and Lucy's life? They seem to be totally inept and they do not get it at all. And that's what's like so jarring about this movie. It's like this is your topic, but you don't even understand the topic you're talking about because all your characters don't understand it.
Mhm.
So that's I'm getting like really hyped about this. That's like a big problem I have with this. It's like I don't like I'm viewing this and like I get it, but every character acts like the opposite of how you'd expect someone to act.
Mhm. Yeah, that would be understanding or sensitive to it. I see
Exactly.
what you mean.
There's
There
a
are
great
few of
line.
them, yeah.
There's such a good line. Rita is talking to the lawyer, the prosecuting lawyer Turner, and she's like, "Have a modicum of respect for like for Sam and what's going on in this case." And like literally, like a scene earlier, she refers to him as a retard. I was like, she doesn't even have like no one gets it in this movie. It's like all this dialogue is meant to like I think kind of paint this picture of Sam in a certain way, but it's like all the characters surrounding it don't even get it either. Like she tells a guy to have a modicum of respect. She has no respect herself, and I don't think it's like her fault as a character. I think it's the writing.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
like
I think it's the purpose.
The movie doesn't even realize what respecting these people even is.
Yeah, I think it's meant to make her look like an even more smarmy and manipulative lawyer, because that's a part of her arc. She's so two-faced.
Well, I mean, like they have the discussion. Sam's like, "Do you believe in me? Do you think that I deserve to have my daughter back?" She's like, "It doesn't matter what I think." And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
oh shit.
So that's
yeah.
that's why I'm okay with her saying that to Turner, because she's meant to be duplicitous. Like it's not a fact that she doesn't know how to interact with Sam. It's the fact that she's in work mode and she needs to lie and she needs to make a huge case. She has nothing to work with, so all she can really do is attack.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it needs to be that way.
Okay, that's a good way to put it. Just like in the moment when I watched the movie, I was like, "What?" Like, I was like, "You're not even respectful, and you're gonna go after him for not being." I was like, "Dude, she's like, I don't know. She's not a great character in this. I think she's terrible."
Yeah, as a character, no. But she has like this.
Which I think is kind of the point. Is like you build up all these like really bad characters who have these really awful qualities, and I think then it just reinforces the fact that Sam is actually a really good dad. I think a lot of this movie and the characters surrounding him is just supposed to build on the fact that like even though he has this disability, he's still like we keep saying it's like all you need is love, and he just loves his daughter, and he's just trying to do right as best he can. And I think it helps his character come across as like very sympathetic, and you root for him because everyone else surrounding him is fucking awful.
Well, yeah, and then there's supposedly like she gets better throughout the film. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of it, she's like, I think I've gotten more out of this relationship than you have.
Yeah.
And she like leaves her husband 'cause she's cheating on him, which she would have done without him saying stuff. And,
Right.
like she's spending more time with her kid, and so all this stuff, and it's very just very blatant. Like it's obvious to me.
Yeah.
Oh
I mean,
yeah,
it's not,
and especially like how she delivered that line. She's like, "Oh, I worry, Sam." and it was just like the I worry about Sam that Annie said in her testimony. When she was testifying, I worry that if they take Sam away from this girl, they'll take a piece away from her. And then at the end, you could tell it was set up for this really melodramatic line. Then like, I worry, Sam. I worry that I got more out of this relationship than you did. And I was like, I cringed before she even said it because
You can
it was
see what's coming.
it was a cringe setup, and I was
Yeah.
like, no, 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 you don't need to
Right.
do it like that because it's.
So I want to talk about another bit of scenes I don't like. This is why it kind of feels exploitive to disabilities to me. There's the scene where they're trying to find good school shoes for Lucy.
I love that. I love that
Ah.
scene.
I actually, so part of it is really great. Is that's Brett Spinner is the guy who is like the Payless guy who's helping him find shoes. That's Data. He plays Data in all the Star Trek movies, and he's in.
Oh, you're
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Oh.
it's Brett Spinner. I like had to pause it and be like, "Are you kidding me? Like he's in this movie? It's just such a little minor role." I was like, "That's Data right there." It's great. My problem with that scene is I think it's all like played for laughs, which is why I think it's like they're not taking these mental disabilities seriously. It's like they make like jokes about like, oh, these shoes are light up, or the one guy who's like very paranoid, he brings like these like set of like stilettos with like animal print on them that are clearly not. It's clearly she can't wear them, and so it's like that's why I think it's like it's like making fun of them
Well,
in their
see,
own movie.
I don't
but
think
the
it's
point
necessarily
is supposed
making
to, yeah.
fun of them. I think it's that they don't see everything all the way. They don't see the entire point of everything. It's very much like I am an individual. I don't like Brad like saying these shoes light up, and I think it's
Yeah.
funnier to us because he's not, he's mentally disabled.
Well,
It's
okay,
funnier for
see,
that
I
reason.
disagree
But I
'cause,
think
yeah.
he's being like, he's being dramatic. He's trying to make a joke. Like as an actor playing a version of himself who has a mental disability, that would be something that he would actually say. And I think he understands. I think it would be disingenuous to say that's exploitative if he is himself the one doing it. I think he is to say that he isn't self-aware enough to understand that is self-exploitative. I think is reading too much into it for us. If he is willing to do that line, I think he understands and wants to humanize and not make it awkward to be like we're real people. We can make jokes and we understand.
Yeah, I think the only reason it's funny is because he has a mental disability. That's
I
why I think
disagree
it's
with that.
exploitative.
I think if
yeah.
I did that, I think it'd be funny.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's the thing. It's like I've done stupid stuff like that, like shopping with my niece and stuff like that. I think he's trying to make a joke, necessarily. And like I think maybe not like his character necessarily, but like the actor, I believe, is like he knows it's gonna be funny. And
Yeah.
I think that's the point.
Yeah, because
I agree with like the way you stated it. I'm on board with that for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I
That's why I love that scene. I think
Yeah.
it's really sweet, and I think it's really funny too. Like at the end, like, dude, does she get a balloon? Or does only she get a balloon?
Yeah.
Or all of us?
I
And then they
guess-
walk out all with balloons because it's like fun. Like there are real people that do have.
It's
and they
more
have,
Beatles stuff though,
yeah,
too in the cross.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
more Beatles stuff. But it's like we're allowed to have childish desires, but it's also like you can express childish desires. They're a part of like the message of the film. Like it is okay, we accept it. Why don't you? Because the more people that look at things this way, the better the world will be. Like it feels like it's tone deaf because they're mentally disabled, but they're also playing on the fact that we allow people with those disabilities to feel those types of things, but because we think that they don't understand the real world. But we're
Right.
trying to say that the real world needs more people like this.
I guess. I mean, I get what you're saying. That scene did not play well to me. It feels like it's funny because they're disabled, in a way, and not because they're just actually funny, or it's actually funny dialogue, or what they're. That's my problem with it. Is it feels like it's played for laughs because of the mental disability, and not because the actual dialogue or whatever they're doing is actually funny. And that's why I had a big disconnect with that.
So
But I get what you're saying. Like, don't get me wrong. Like that actually makes sense. And if you have more background on like the people who are in these roles who do have a mental disability, and if they think it's funny and they want to kind of communicate this message that like, hey, we can also be funny. We can also just interact and have a good time, and
Yeah.
and we can be a part of the world. then I get what you're saying. I just think the way that this movie plays out some of its stuff, especially when the whole gang is together, it feels just like it's always played for laughs. And like the only way you can use a disabled person in a film is to be funny. And that's why the exploitative term I keep using, that's why I bring it up, is because there's not a dramatic scene with them. It's always like, oh, remember this guy who like kind of doesn't really get it? Like, oh, this is him being funny again. That's why I don't love how they're used in the film, is because it feels like it's always for laughs.
Here's a fun thought experiment. So let's take Brad when he hits the shoes together and they light up, right? Imagine John C. Riley playing himself in that role. That'd be funny, right?
I would say so. That's why I'm on board with you on this.
Right? Now,
Yeah.
now take
John C. Riley of Talladega Nights fame.
exactly, yeah, or Step
Walk
Brothers. I
Hard.
don't know
Or
why
Step
you like.
Brothers.
This
don't know why I
Walk
get-
hard.
Yeah,
Oh,
walk hard.
hard, yeah.
Or he's
Now-
also in the new Kong movie too.
So
Oh, he's great in Kong. I actually really like Kong.
Okay, yeah.
I think it's a really good movie. Of
Now-
all the Godzilla kind of universe, I think Kong is like one of the top ones. But anyways, John C. Riley. Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, now
Thought
and now
experiment.
and now, take him out and replace him with Tom Cruise and have the same thing. It plays different, but it's still kind of goofy because
Yeah.
it's a deconstruction of.
I would
this
feel like
idea
Tom
that-
Cruise just being
So
insane.
so Jaden
Yeah,
Jaden
exactly.
Jaden says that like so he goes out with his niece and he would probably do something like that. It's
Yeah.
funny because you're trying to be goofy to make your kid laugh, like a kid
Yeah.
you're with laugh. The thing is like I don't think the way it's portrayed in that scene is they're not trying to be goofy to make Lucy laugh. They're goofy because they have a mental disability.
And I think that's
And that's
your.
why-
I
that's
think
why-
I think that's our baggage as
Yeah.
people who are higher
agree with you,
functioning,
yeah.
bringing that to them.
And yeah, and again, like obviously my take is different than your guys, but like that's how it played out to me, and that's why I think if John C. Riley, is it John C. Riley?
Yeah, it's
it's
John
John
C.
Just
C.
said
Reilly.
okay. I don't know why I thought I was saying it wrong. That's why it's like if it's John C. Riley doing it, I know it's for laughs because he's funny and he's doing it to get a laugh. I felt like the way it was shown in this film, they were not trying to get laughs, but the way it's filmed and the way it's portrayed is for the audience to get laughs. And I thought it was kind of taking advantage
So
of
the
like,
character,
this
the
disability,
character in the movie isn't trying to get a laugh.
yeah, that's what I thought.
But the movie is trying to get a laugh.
Yeah,
itself.
exactly.
Yeah, okay.
That's why I think it's exploitative of the disability because it's like it's funny because they're not all there.
Well, that's like humor in general. Like you can think of like any movie that like they're not trying to get a laugh in the film, but it comes off as funny as to us.
Yeah.
Like Dear Lord, Baby Jesus. Yeah, like he's not trying to make a joke.
6 pounds, 7 ounces, baby Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. But it's funny to us.
Yeah.
So I think
I
that's
love
just,
that movie.
yeah, I think that's just the way
Yeah.
humor functions better when
I think
it is
that-
the audience interplay and not the on the screen.
I think
like
the other
that.
big difference is we're talking about John C. Riley, who is primarily in comedies. So I know that I'm supposed to laugh at this.
Yeah,
is
but
that,
he's also
that
a
scene,
goofy.
that
Yeah,
scene
that's why I
felt
said
something
like
I wasn't
with
gonna laugh at. Yeah.
like Tom Cruise.
Right.
It's
It's
different, but it's still like like he's trying to, we're looking for good sturdy school shoes. With these shoes light up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, we can move on for this. I think I've gotten off my soapbox. I just don't like the way that scene's put together.
That's
Um,
fair. I think you just need
but
to work on
I
yourself.
agree that you guys have. That's good. No, and I don't disagree with what you guys are saying. It just
Well,
it
it's like-
still doesn't fit it
So
right
and
for
I
me.
mean,
so.
I believe you that like I agree with you that they're using the disability as almost like a ticket seller instead of like an educational purpose or like a way to show
Right.
like a true story, like something that's sentimental. They're using it to make money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Calvin. I think do you have more topics for us to go over?
So the last thing I want to talk about is we haven't talked about her enough. I think is Lucy and Dakota Fanning.
Right. Yeah.
And I think this is it's part and parcel of the thing they brush over the biggest of why the whole conflict is arising in the first place. Like they keep talking about math and intelligence and geometry and those types of things, but it's this psychological idea of parentification. An uglier term for it is emotional incest. It's this yeah.
I think in our last review, we did it. I said self-cest about Lucky. And dude, everything about cest is like just so gross to say.
But yeah, so it's the idea that a child takes on the emotional support. They're a partner to their parent, and their growth as a human is stunted because they have to take on more qualities of like an adult that they're not ready for. They haven't grown enough to actually be able to learn any of that, and it drives a lot of complexes in people. Into adulthood, it's a massive problem. But they just keep talking about her like, she's too smart for him. But the thing is, like, there's so many times where like one of the first ones was, you're different than other daddies. Oh, sorry. And she realizes, oh, he needs to be comforted.
Yeah.
And she puts out her
Or
hand.
she purposely like misreads the words. And
Yeah,
things
because
like that.
they
Yeah.
show like a couple scenes earlier that she's teaching him to
Yeah.
read it, and now she can't read it.
So
yeah.
immediately when the time elapsed or whatever, and like it was the baby became Dakota Fanning, I was like, oh, okay, so obviously she's gonna be the mature character in this movie. Because
Yeah.
that's the way she is in every movie that she's in. That's
talked
such a
about-
perfect casting for obviously this role.
We talked about it earlier because it's the same in like War of the Worlds,
yeah.
where like Tom Cruise is doing all this stuff, and
Yeah.
she's like better at some of it than he is. Like she's like more aware of what's going on than
Yeah.
he is. She's a great actress. I think.
Oh.
I think she as far
The
as
movie
child
Justin
acting goes,
Timberlake is great.
Yeah.
And
What is
so,
it? Out of Time? or-
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, and she's such a great way she tells emotions with her body and with her eyes.
Her
When-
eyes are bonkers, and especially
Yeah.
in this movie, dude. Like
And
it's,
she knows exactly what response she's going to get out of an audience, the way she averts her gaze
Uh-huh.
at certain places. There's like, or like my favorite scene is that one where I thought when Turner's questioning her and they're all in that little room and Sam's
Right.
in the courtroom watching her on TV, and he was like, didn't so you just had a birthday, did you open your presents? She was like, oh no. And then she was like, oh well, yeah, I did. I got the White Album, the Help album, limited edition. It's like, well, you just said that you didn't open your presents, and your friend told us because your friend told everyone that you said you were adopted. Why
that
would
kid's
he
a
say it?
dick.
Yeah, he is a dick.
Dude, I hate that. I in my notes I spelled his name CONNER to be different from mine.
That's actually what he is.
Is it
Yeah.
okay? On purpose, I was like, oh, he's not the same kind of Connor as me.
Yeah.
So I spelled his name differently in my notes. So I was like, I refuse to be associated with this young man.
Yeah, but then he asked her, "It's like, so why would he say that?" And she looks at him with like, kids lie all the time. And I wrote down "little girl swag," like, oh man,
Yeah.
it's like, like she just absolutely owned him, and like,
Right.
and it was so believable that she was acting to lie, and it wasn't like she was trying to be like genuine. She was being genuine in a lie, which was a weird meta kind of
Yeah,
idea.
no, that's
like,
a good way to put it.
yeah, and so that was fantastic. And then like the other one that really got me is when she first moves in with Laura Dern's family,
Right.
and he shows up with all the dogs, and she runs out of the house, and he's like, Lucy, and she's like, you never called, you never came, like you forgot about me, you don't love, and that was just like, oh, it really tugged on the heartstrings.
Yeah, I was crying at that
Yeah.
point.
Again, yeah. This movie is, I think, while we have our problems with it, clearly, it does have some really good like spots that just like, kind of hit you
So,
emotionally.
yeah, the emotional
Yeah.
aspects of this are done very well.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
They hit me.
And that's what's so sad is there's so much promise here. And I think a big part of like what drove a lot of critics' scores, it's routinely rated under like 5 on a 10 scale. It's around like 3 or 4 for some people. And I think that it's because you can see so much promise and so much potential, and it's just wasted
Yeah.
on poor directing, poor scripting, poor camera. I mean, like the other thing is like everything's blue. Like I don't
The
know.
whole movie.
Why is
dude,
why is it like
Yeah.
that?
Besides the foster home, which I think is like a reddish, like.
Yeah,
kind of
it's
vibe,
actually.
yeah.
I went back when we watched the second time. It's really only the hospital. It's the social worker area when he's interviewed for the with his psychologist, and then the courtroom. And I think it's meant to reflect this idea of conflict and like cold objectivity.
Right.
This is it's us versus the world type thing. No one sees me the way it is, but
And then I guess the tone just get a little bit warmer
yeah.
towards the end of the movie, which the end of the movie is also just like incredibly rushed in my opinion. Like it's just like all of a sudden like,
boy.
oh, everything's fixed.
Oh boy. Is
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's almost like that to
I still
me,
don't even know what happens.
yeah, well, that to me is the moral of this story. That is what your film should have been about. It should have been talking about like how like a very real like this is how I interact with the world. I fail at things. I screw up, and like it's all about the other characters after a while.
Yeah.
And it's not about like living as someone with who's autistic tendencies, but it's how we create family structures and support structures. Like the final scene with everybody at the soccer field shows the Foster family. It shows Rita and Willie.
Right.
It shows the posse. It shows Sam and Annie wasn't there.
I like
think
that message at
No,
the end.
Annie is
Yeah.
gone after she never appears.
Yeah.
I think
After
it's
she gets
good.
dropped off at
I like the
courtroom.
whole phrase like it takes a village. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
and I like that they portray that at the end of the movie.
I
and
just
think
I just
it's-
feel like they didn't do a good enough job. Like throughout the whole thing, like it was very like feel good, goofy. Like everyone's running around in a circle at the end because we're all just filled with joy and nothing matters because we're all here to love and support
right.
each other.
I actually really hate that. If we want to like kind of are we doing stuff we want to talk about the end?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually really I agree with Jaden. It's like an oddly ambiguous ending where it's like he's like, okay, he goes to Laura Dern. He's like, I need your help. So does he get her back? Does he like keep her, or is he like just
No
more,
idea.
Is he just more involved with her living at the foster home?
Okay, which
Like-
would be the best solution in
Yeah.
my brain? Also, is like having Laura Dern and then keep Lucy
Yeah,
and
that's what I'm
have
saying,
him
it's like,
be
I
a
don't
part
really
of their
know.
life,
Yeah.
which is like to me the best solution.
Yeah, when she keeps sneaking out to their house,
Yeah.
when he moves, that's the ideal situation. She's close enough that he's close enough that a 7-year-old could walk to his house in the middle of the night repeatedly and be safe. That time of proximity is
Safe is,
yeah.
I mean,
I'm just saying,
I
it's
mean,
like
safe
what
as
is
the
the
as the film allowed.
because
Yeah.
like as she's climbing down these sketchy ladders and climbing up the same sketchy ladder, like to get to
Yeah.
his like second story
I just-
balcony.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
What the
just I just don't get how it ends. So it just goes from him and Laura Dern talking to like a soccer game. It's
Yeah.
like, so who has custody? Is he keeping track of her and she's helping, or is Laura Dern keeping track of her and he's helping? Like
Yeah.
it's like it's oddly ambiguous for a kind of a story that you want
Frustratingly.
closure for.
Yeah.
Because it was
absolutely.
Because the
like,
whole point of this film is to like you go through all these court hearings and the whole point is to get closure. Like who,
Yeah.
like
So,
how does this end?
It
And
feels
it
like they're
ends with
basically,
no
we gotta
closure.
we gotta wrap this thing up. Like let's get
Yeah.
done with it. And like, well, what's the story ending? Like, who gives a shit? Let's just,
And it's
Yeah.
like
yeah, let's go.
it's like, you know what, like it doesn't matter, we'll just have a fun heartfelt thing where he's the referee and he's gonna do funny like dance motions, and I feel like Sean Penn was just like they were just like, do whatever you want and we'll just
just like
film it.
follows her to the goal too. I'm like, this
Dude,
referee
it's
is
so
bad.
awkward.
yeah, exactly.
I-
But I
yeah.
think it calls back to the beginning when we were talking about how he directed TV shows. It feels like the ending of a goofy CW show.
Yeah, it does.
It
It
does,
totally
yeah.
does. You're absolutely right. It's a really weird ending. I didn't like it single bit. Yeah, I've never seen this movie, but every time he was like doing a goofy thing in the ref's outfit, I thought of that movie Kicking and Screaming that
Oh, you've never
Ferrell?
seen that?
I've never seen that.
that Will
either.
Ferrell's
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
But that's all that popped in my head was the cover of that film. Like I was like, this is probably what Kicking and Screaming is. Like it's so weird. Like it's just it is a totally unsatisfying ending to a movie that I thought could have at least closed out well, because I think everything with like the foster family and kind of how are they going to move forward with this relationship, and how involved is Sean Penn's character going to be, what's kind of the total conclusion of Lucy's life, and it's closed out in this like really ambiguous way, and it's totally unsatisfying. That's what I think.
Yeah. And yeah, that's how I think too. Is like your tension didn't get solved. Like your whole, what is your movie even trying to say? I can't get it other than like,
That's the note I made. That's kind of like the closing thought.
Yeah.
What is this movie even about? Like I don't even know what it's about. Is it to shed light on mental disabilities and how we should interact and treat these people? Is it about like custody? Is it about what point is it appropriate to remove a child from a home because it's hindering them, or at what point do you keep a child in the home because it would hinder them to be removed? Is it about I mean, I just I don't understand what the message is in this movie at all.
It's to make money. That's why I have the
But
problem
that's-
with
yeah.
with the exploitation, because it doesn't have an ending. It doesn't seem like a real story.
Yeah,
It just seems like you guys made money off of this, and that's the whole point.
Yeah.
my big issue is just like because it tackles like a really, I think an issue that should be talked about. Like at
Yeah.
what
and a beautiful
how do
story
we-
could be there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
this movie should have been played like purely drama, and I think it should have been more.
Mhm.
I think what makes this movie would have made this movie better is like make it like a courtroom drama surrounding this specific case of a father with a mental disability, and at what point is it appropriate or inappropriate to remove the daughter from that situation.
Yeah.
And I think if you make it really dramatic, I think then this movie is really good. My problem is like it's the score, it's kind of the
Yeah.
way they set up scenes, it's the way they play things for laughs. That it's like all the drama is kind of taken out of this movie because just the way people act around each other, it's like it doesn't seem real. I think if you make this like a just all about like kind of the court case, it's a really important issue, and I think it should be talked about. But it's like this movie totally like misses the mark on that for me. Like that, I think that's what would make this thing better, which is why I'm so disappointed in it because it's a really cool important issue that is just told poorly.
Yeah, it's like a slow pitch softball, like is pitched to them, and then they just come just short of a home run.
Yeah,
it's like the
it's-
way it feels.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's such a good idea, which is why when this was recommended, I like saw the synopsis for it, and I kind of was aware of what this movie was about,
Yeah.
and I thought it was going to be like hardcore drama, and it's not. It's like so goofy. The movie is so
Yeah.
goofy.
And to its detriment, I think.
Ex-
Yeah.
absolutely.
That's what's weird.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I agree. So I think we wrapping up on this one.
yeah. I guess we go ahead and give ratings here.
Dude, I'm gonna give this.
Yeah. So what did you? Yeah, Ringo Stars.
So, yeah,
Ringo
so,
Starr.
so I just did members of the Beatles was my thing, like so like basically 1 through 4 kind of
Yeah.
anomaly, and I gave it 1 Ringo Starr, which is worth about 1.5 Beatles, so
Okay.
or like 1 Beatle, sorry, not 1.5.
Yeah. This is probably like maybe there's enough there that I feel like this could have been really good. It just executed badly. So I'm not gonna knock the movie for like its premise because it is good.
Yeah.
And a lot of the performances are good. Like I said, like Sean Penn, I'm like really sold that he is. I know he's a big time actor,
Yeah.
but he really sold me on the character he was playing. So I'm going to give it points for that. And Dakota Fanning, I think, is great in this. I kind of criticized the kid in Loki, the kid Loki, when we did our review of that. And he's like way older than Dakota Fanning is in this.
Yeah,
but
Dakota
Dakota Fanning is amazing in this.
She's
Like,
Yeah.
also like done more movies before this.
yeah, but
happened,
still,
yeah.
it's like she's like a really kid actor, and,
Yeah.
and she did great in this. So I'm not going to knock the movie for that. There's enough in this movie that I can be happy with. So I'm not going to like really beat it to death, but this is like maybe like 2 or 3 Ringo Stars. Even still with that, it's like I just think it's such a good story, had so much potential, and just didn't reach it. And so like I get this loses a lot for me because of that.
Yeah. Jane? Were your Ringo Stars out of 4?
So mine was 1 out of 4 based on the Beatles members.
Oh God,
Yeah.
okay. Okay,
So
fair.
it's basically a 2.5
Then
out of 10.
Then this is like a 1 star then, in terms of the Ringo Stars.
yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
I thought it was out of 10. Out of 10, it's a 2 or 3.
That's what I gave it 2.5 out of 10.
Yeah.
Is basically the math there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know where to put it.
I mean, based on your rating scale, it'd be like a 0.03.
Yeah.
Dude,
It's
so
the thing is
you
that
shoot so low on everything.
I know, but I think here there are higher points than anything like in Black Widow or Loki. Despite the fact that I find everything else so much worse,
Right.
it's more uneven than it is overall a mess conceptually.
Right.
So
That's a good way to put it. I think conceptually this movie's great.
yeah,
It just the execution is so poor to me.
yeah, and I think what's also the one thing I was like, okay, this is a movie about mentally disabled people. Let's go back and look at reviews back then. Like, what was was this controversial? And almost nothing I could find was controversial. Everybody
well,
was
no,
like,
because before this it was Forrest Gump and What's Eating Gilbert Grape and Rain Man, and it led up to this
Yeah,
movie.
so it would have been okay to
I
make
think
Yeah.
they
that
were
movie.
taking advantage of a market of already 3 successful movies.
Right.
yeah, I guess that's true. I just felt like this one was like let's try and make a real character with all of the idiosyncrasies of someone with autistic tendencies, and I was expecting there to be more controversy than there was, and I think that it plays exactly how you would expect. That this was so good that no one really had any complaint about it. I think you could have made this film now, and there probably would be more controversy because
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
because of
That's what
cancel
I'm saying
culture.
is-
But I
like-
don't
yeah.
think that I still think that people will come back and say, yeah, but Sean Penn's performance was still good and not something that would be canceled.
Yeah.
It would be just everything like you were talking about, how they played up the 2 that did have disabilities
Right.
playing versions of themselves, that being tone deaf.
Or just like the some of the referring to these people, the way they do it is it would be so out of place right now. That's why I like watching it. I was kind of shocked. And again, this movie came out 20 years ago, so you can have something that's a product of its time and it's still relevant and appropriate to watch. But I don't. If you release this movie now with the exact same dialogue, I mean, this is an absolute like headline. Everyone would be so mad about that. They'd be like, Sean Penn should never work again, or Michelle Pfeiffer, because the way she refers to them,
because
like,
she actually says it.
yeah, it would actually be, that's like a cancel culture's wet dream. Is this movie if it's released right now?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
it
So
would be absurd.
I give more points for emotional pull than I do comedy, because I think comedy is a lot easier to do than, because to get good emotion you have to create a realistic environment where this works, or you have to have fantastic performances. Comedy is a lot easier to do because it's just how you lead expectations and context. So for me, like, especially, I think the most important scene, and I think what everything kind of boils down to, is when Rita breaks down, literally she breaks down Sam's wall, and she pulls all of those cootie catchers, whatever the hell he'd been making that whole time.
Right.
And she's like, I fail every day. My husband is screwing someone more beautiful than me. I have a son that hates me.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that is the heart of everything that they're trying to say. And that scene right there, like, there's so many moments of those. I'll give this, I give it a, so what is that? Like a 2 point, no, not a 2 point.
We had to do it in
A
Ringo you have to do it in
1.75
Ringo
Ringo
Starr's-
star, which equates to like a 4 Ringo star on a 10-star scale.
Yeah, okay.
So I would say 4 on a 10-star
Yeah.
scale.
I think that's weird. This is, I think, the first movie that you've rated higher than me. 'cause
yeah,
I-
don't
I-
get
It's
used to
definitely
it.
the first movie you've rated higher than me.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't get used to it.
Yeah. No, and I get what you're saying. I think it's there's
Actually, I
enough.
think you rated Lighthouse higher than I did. But
Yeah,
other
I
than
mean-
that, yeah.
Oh well, that's different because that was Calvin's
Yeah,
baby.
that was literally that literally was my wet
Yeah.
dream to get like
Yeah.
2 on the nose, but you know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's fine. And like you said, I agree with you. I think there's really great. That's why this movie is so frustrating to me, because it's like it's such a good idea, and it's just, and there's so many good emotional scenes, but then it's just like it's surrounded by garbage. And that's why
It's-
it's
it's
so
sur-
hard. It's so hard to watch this, because it's like, God damn, like, just stick to your good idea and keep
Yeah.
doing that.
I'd
But then
actually-
they keep straying away from it.
Yeah, I'd actually call this film pretentious. The way they set up the drama is pretentious because it's unearned, you know.
Right? Yeah. No, I agree with that.
So
All right, so we got our ratings out. I think we're
Just,
we're gonna wrap
shout out
this
Bob Kelso.
yeah. We didn't talk about him. Yeah, I
he's actually a really fair and decent judge. You know, a lot
I
of
think
times.
he's the exact same character he is in Scrubs.
Yeah, but the same, but like normally you have like a judge that's like plays one side pretty hard, like I'm against this, but he was very like
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
That's
agree with
you.
Ken
Was
Ken
interesting.
Jenkins. We thought he was dead. I had to look it up because
I think that was just me, and everyone wanted to know because they had no idea because they don't keep tabs on him anymore.
he's still mucking about. Yeah, no, you're right. That's a good point. He seemed like a fair judge who was like actually listening. It wasn't like a get him out of my courtroom or it wasn't all this like
Yeah, it wasn't unnecessary.
it wasn't weird courtroom drama. Yeah,
It was
yep.
all just coming
He
from
seemed
Rita
like a
being
real
dumb.
judge
Yeah,
almost.
yeah.
So a lot of
Yeah.
judges portrayed in movies are not. They seem very biased.
It was cool watching this because it was just so neat to see all these people who I know from other things, but
Yeah.
just seeing them so young, I was like, oh, it's this person.
Bob
Oh, it's
Kelso was
this
the same.
one.
Yeah.
Oh, it's this one.
Like Data and
Yeah.
that one. I didn't realize that one.
It
And, then-
is.
and
Yeah,
I can see that. And
Never
once you
watched
said
Star
that,
Trek. So I would
Once you
know.
said that though, I saw his face and I was like, oh
Yeah.
my god, yeah, you're
Yeah,
absolutely right. That
so
is
it's him.
Data with a little bit more color.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, and that's why. Again, that's I
Is
think
he the one with like the visor?
no, that's Geordie
Okay.
LaForge.
Is he the guy with the head?
Here, I'll
He's the guy who looks like an alien.
I don't never
He's
seen
an
Star
android.
Trek.
He's
dude.
an android. He's like really pale. He's like yellow eyes. You've never seen Data?
Okay, I've seen him before, but yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
that's
know.
that's
I don't
Brett
know.
Spinner.
I
Yeah.
don't know who Data is when you like say his name.
What? Oh my
Yeah.
god. Okay, that's I
I've
love.
seen
I
I
love
only-
Star
two
Trek.
Star Trek movies. It's the ones with Chris Pine.
Oh, okay.
There's only one I've seen.
I love. I
Serious.
absolutely love Star Trek. I watched. Next Gen is the one I really am into. I love Next
So
Gen.
is that the one with Patrick Stewart?
Yeah,
Okay,
no,
so-
he's
Picard.
great. Yeah. So do we want to? Speaking of other things, do we want to get into what we're watching lately?
Yeah, we can do that.
yeah.
All right. So I just before you guys came over, I finished Space Jam. Next New Legacy,
New
Next
Legacy,
Legacy, or whatever.
Why?
Fuck Braun.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy. So I didn't watch this because I really wanted to watch it. It was more like it's like a curiosity of mine because
Morbid?
I know this is gonna be
I
bad.
have
And
zero interest in watching this movie.
yeah, and so like I have some nostalgia from the first one. I liked it when it came out. I was a little kid when it came out, and I didn't even care for basketball, but I thought Michael Jordan was like really awesome. So I watched this only because I wanted to like experience like how terrible a film can be. Um, I don't want to hold LeBron James acting against him because I don't think Michael Jordan is especially good in the first one either. LeBron James is terrible in this. He has no idea how to deliver a line. He's like talking to his kids like a robot would talk to a child. It is awful. The other thing that's like just so bad about this is Calvin has brought up that he thinks that Marvel films are just commercials for the next film. This is like literally like a 2-hour presentation on like Warner Brothers like lineup of films. Like so you know the game Kingdom Hearts where they like travel to different worlds and they're all like Disney themed. LeBron James and his kid get like sucked into like an algorithm played by Don Cheadle, who is also fucking terrible in this. And they literally go through
Planet.
they literally go through planets that are like worlds that are this is Harry Potter world. And they're like, this is what LeBron James would look like in Harry Potter world. And they go through Matrix world, where this is LeBron James in Matrix world. And eventually they arrive at like Looney Tunes world. But I mean, it is literally it is an absolutely a commercial for Warner Brothers properties. it is almost like the whole first half of the movie is just like, let's check out what Warner Brothers has on the docket or what they have for you to check out. It is nothing to do with actual Space Jam. It has nothing to do with basketball. It has nothing to do with like the Looney Tunes or LeBron James even. It's awful, and I actually like fell asleep partway through it, so I don't even know the basketball scenes. I just know the beginning. The first half is just bad, and I think part of what makes it even worse is the way they treat LeBron James at the beginning of this. So the first Space Jam is Michael Jordan. It's about him failing at being a baseball player, and I think it helps you like kind of gain sympathy for that character, and like you want to see him succeed later because he's a terrible baseball player, even though he's a great basketball player. And so when you see him play basketball, you're like, yay, Michael Jordan doing a great thing. This movie starts out with like the opening credits is 4 or 5 minutes of LeBron highlights, and it literally talks about how like him as a prospect, how he was like coming out of high school and he's a generational talent. And then after this big highlight montage ends, it's like a wide shot from like a helicopter or something like of his like gigantic mansion compound like that he lives on. And it's like, how do you have sympathy for this guy at all, or like root for him at all? It's like this is what I think Jane was saying. He's like the first athlete to become a billionaire. He's about to be. He's about to become a billionaire. How do you have sympathy for this character at all? Like at least when the first Space Jam, it's like about Michael Jordan failing, and the movie in and of itself is kind of a redemption when he becomes like he plays basketball again, and the movie ends with him like getting back on the court as the Chicago Bull. Yeah. This movie starts out with LeBron James. It's like God, and then it like just continues to pump his tires. This movie is fucking wacko, man.
So that's very LeBron James-esque. I am not a fan of him. I do not. I think he's ruining basketball. But
yeah, I absolutely give this every thumb down that you can gather up. This movie is terrible, and it's just like I will never complain about Marvel and their kind of how they commercialize their movies to kind of promote their other movies, because this is awful. There's a point where LeBron James like he enters Toon World and he becomes a cartoon. And you know, like when like Wile E. Coyote like falls into the ground, and it's like kind of he falls into like a silhouette, you know, and he crawls out of it, and it's like Wile E. Coyote shaped. LeBron James falls into and when he crawls out of a Nike logo, like it's like that's what's in the ground, and he crawls out of a fucking Nike logo. It's fucking insane.
It sounds awful. It just sounds the worst.
Yeah.
I will not not let my eyes be tortured by this.
Again, this is a movie I only watched because I have HBO Go and it was on, and I wanted to experience it that way. I can tell other people to like not watch it. This movie is fucking awful.
Yeah.
It sounded more like you wanted like a hate nap.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So I want to nap. I want to be mad about it.
Yeah. It's awful. All right, I'm done. I'm done talking about how crappy this movie is.
So I've been watching season 2 of Dave, which is the rapper Little Dicky's.
That come out?
Yeah, it's
I've been waiting.
I think episode 5 or 6 now. It is very different from the first season. It's I enjoy it, but I understand like most people who like the first season actually don't like it.
Really?
It's definitely like so like at the end of the first season it got a lot into like Gator's depression and like so a lot of the characters like
he's
more
like bipolar.
Yeah, like more in depth about it. And this season it is just, I mean, you do not like Little Dicky.
Really?
He starts to come around, but like it's very but I think it's realistic because it's like about when he first got his big paycheck and like
Right.
how he started changing, like how all his friends didn't like him and stuff like that, and like his dating life and things like that. And it's just some of the episodes I think they're done very well, and I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of Little Dicky in general. So
So I love that show.
Yeah.
So because I was like checking Hulu when it was gonna come out, and
Yeah.
I must have just lost track of it. I really like the first season, so I'm very excited
Yeah.
I'll definitely check that out. I
yeah, it's,
really
it's
like that
it
show.
is not as funny, but I think it is better.
Okay,
Yeah.
no, I like that a lot.
Yeah, and then I haven't been watching much other than what's for our show, but another music recommendation that I've been getting into is this band called Wardruna. They are
Can
like
you say how do you spell that way if people want to check it out? Because I don't even know how to
uh,
spell what you just said.
yeah, Wardruna. So Wardruna, but you know,
Okay, so for our American audience, Wardruna.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
Okay.
it.
that's what I said.
Yeah, you didn't say it very phonetic.
I sometimes I can't even hear it anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's Scandinavian folk music. So
Right.
it's a lot. They're really interesting musical phrases and modes that you don't hear in a lot of American music, and the instrumentation too is also very interesting. But there's a lot of atmosphere, but still melodic in a more minor sense rather than a major sense. Like our folk is generally of a more positive or fun tone, like
Yeah,
Americana,
gotcha.
bluegrass, country too.
Cool. I
Except
love
if
it when
you're
you
like,
have
yeah.
these
Yeah,
music
tell you,
recommendations.
so Calvin has a very good taste in music, so like I mean, check it out. Like,
You did
Yeah.
you talked about Willow Smith last time, and it was great. I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah, did you actually listen to her?
I
Well,
Yeah.
then I don't
No.
care. Then you don't need to say anything.
no, I just think it's great that you have like this like really wide range of things you listen to, and so I'm well, you showed us. Okay, so we finished that podcast, and Calvin showed us for like an hour, like different artists that he likes, and so I added like a bunch of new stuff to my
yeah,
Spotify. So
same.
it wasn't-
Boxing, great
yeah,
one.
it wasn't. It
Oh
wasn't.
yeah,
You
yeah.
got you
Well,
got
I'm
good
gonna
taste,
I'm
man.
gonna wait about Foxing because that's coming out on August.
Yeah, the new album,
6th.
whatever,
Yeah, Draw Down the Moon. Oh, can't wait.
Yeah, so it wasn't specifically Willow Smith, but after that, you just showed us a bunch of stuff, and I was like, okay, I'm putting that on my playlist. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
no, your taste is great, and you have such a wide range. So I actually
Yeah.
really like that. Because what are we watching lately doesn't need to be literally what are we watching. It could just be like, what are we into right now?
Yeah,
And so
and
I really love that you brought up some music because I think that's a great idea.
yeah, and the way I like to collect music is I have like there's like some genres that I just like, oh, more black metal. Great. I need more black metal. Throw more black metal in. But generally everything else is like, oh, this is unique. This is different and even if it's not necessarily a genre that I like, I'll just add it because oh, those are cool. Like I love Joywave. And Joywave has got me into a lot of other bands in that type of like electronic alternative style,
Right.
and his voice is so unlike anything else in any of my catalog. But I just shuffle for me is I mean what I've added this month. I've got Dark Tranquility, Wardruna, Skinned, Maximum the Hormone, which is like
That's a
these-
dope name
a
for
great
a fucking
band name.
band.
okay. It's
a
even
great
better.
band
It's
name.
like the Japanese version of System of a Down.
Ah, okay.
Okay.
I like
Yeah.
that a lot.
Yeah, and then like Iron Maiden. So like I've got like this month has been interesting.
That's great.
It's actually been fairly tamed compared to like my last 3 months. Well, that's too much.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, with that, I think we're wrapping up. I'm your host Connor, and I have my co-host Jaden
Yee.
and former guest Calvin.
And thanks for having me back.
Yeah, and thank you for listening to Now This Is Podcasting.